Action.
It was 1996, Thanksgiving. I'll never forget that day. We were having a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner, and we were about to go to dessert and starting to tell those stories that people always tell after a meal, family stories about the fun things that have happened. And suddenly, my daughter jumps up from the table and says, I have an announcement to make. I'm dropping out of college. I had 5 children there sitting in front of me. She was the last one to graduate. I lost it. My reaction to that was a rant, an emotional rant. I said some things that I will always regret. My daughter walks to the door after I stopped yelling at her, and she says, Mom, I never want to see you again. I don't want you in my life. And the door slams. When that door slammed, something in me just really broke apart. I looked at my husband and I said, what are we going to do with her? And he said, no. What are we going to do with you? I was frantic. It hit me that I was the one that had to change. And the ironic thing was, I had a PhD in family therapy. I was advising people, that was what I did for a living, on how to be a good parent. I was definitely in trouble because I knew I would do it again. I knew I couldn't stop myself. I had to dig down deep into my training to realize that I had to change my brain. I had to go so deeply within myself to change that I had to develop a process. I had to develop a process that I could continue to use in rewiring my brain. And I found that I had 3 steps from learning about the brain that I would have to go through to change myself. The first step would be to identify some generational patterns that had been there forever about anger and how to express it. Basically, I'd been holding on to it. I had learned never express anger. Then the second step would be to let go of all that anger I'd been holding on to. And then the third step would be rewire the brain. Short of a lobotomy. That were the 3 steps. Well, I worked and worked at it in an empty house with all children gone and my daughter not returning until one day, as I could feel like it was finally getting in my brain, I needed to be different, my daughter comes home. Okay, now I will hand it to the truth here is probably because the credit card she wanted back. But I did feel some movement was happening in me, and I began to talk to her as she was there and tell her I'm creating this process so that I don't have to go through this anymore. And I told her about it, and she looked at me and she said, Mom, I want to take that process. And I said, whoa, why would you take it? And she said, well, because I don't want to be old like you before I get my shit together. Well, okay. There it was. But I knew I was changing. And the beautiful part of that was it hit me with an insight that all of a sudden I was going to impact not only the trajectory of my life, but when she took the process and figured some things out about the patterning that had been a generational pattern, she was going to change her life. And so on, and so on. And so where are we today? I live close enough that I can impact. By invitation, she wanted me to live close enough to impact the grandchildren and how they use anger. And we decided jointly that we want to change the generational pattern that's so definitely in the family. And so my message to you is, you'll always be a parent. You'll always have the opportunity to impact your children. But what I've learned is when I changed myself and took this process, I set up a legacy of parenting that will go on and on and on.
Cut.